From the lowest to the highest, from the furthest to the nearest, from the smallest of the smallest to the greatest of the greatest, yoga is about all of life, everything we do, all of existence. My name's James Bogue. Welcome to the Whole Life Yoga Podcast. In the Indic tradition, the dancer is the archetypal artist because whereas the painter has the brushes and the paints, the artist has his or her own body. And so the differentiation between the form and the practitioner is reduced, and so becomes this very potent lens of inquiry. So having the privilege of sitting with a person who has touched, at least from my perspective, great heights in the realms of professional dance, who also shares a great passion for dance education and inviting people who might not have such extensive experience in the realm of physical discipline to enjoy the benefits of dance. I thought it'd be really interesting to ask Shuka about his journey with dance and movement, and then what people call spirituality. And before we go any further, just to flag up, what does it mean to be spiritual? You know, sometimes people say to me, "Oh, I'm not spiritual." I'm like, "Hold on, are you breathing?" The spirit is the breath of life. You know, inspiration, I breathe in. Expiration, I die. As long as we're alive, we are spiritual beings. But anyway, over to you, Shuka. I would like to ask you, first of all, when do you remember first dancing?
When do I remember first dancing? I think the first time consciously knowing that what I'm doing is dancing is really it was breakdancing. So I got introduced to dance because my mom worked in a psychiatry for kids, and they had a breakdance workshop there for these kids. And my mom asked me if I want to join that breakdance workshop, so I went and I danced, and I liked it. And yeah, that was my first introduction to dance. And then quite soon I joined a place in my hometown, Jena, where I would almost all afternoons after school go and practice breakdancing. Yeah, so that's the very first encounter with that. And then this kind of, you know, obsession with dance, or maybe I should say first, like before the dance, I had an obsession with music. So I was always thinking I would be a professional musician and study music. And I also had an obsession with martial arts. So I kind of thought I was going to become a teacher for sports and music, or a musician who was also a sport teacher. And then when I met dance at some point, I was like, oh, I can stop all the other things because it's music and movement in one. So that's I think what hooked me about the dancing. And then I just kind of got very obsessed with it and pursued many different styles of dancing. Ended up studying it, and through that also I then entered um, in the other practices through kind of somatic approaches, where the attention to the sensation while moving became more important than just the kind of movements that you do. And that was what then brought me into all these other realms that might be relevant to the relationship between yoga and what I do.
And how old were you when you encountered breakdancing?
I was 12,
Okay.
12 years old.
So through your formative teenage years, dance is giving you a lens of ongoing inquiry and expression.
Yeah, like at that time it was breakdancing. It was really about doing impressive things, having fun with my friends. Like all my friends, I either brought them to dancing or they stopped being my friends, and everyone who was in my breakdance group became friends. So we really spent all the weekends together, all the time. We had a lot of adventures, going to breakdance battles in other cities, like in 8 hour long cheap train rides and that kind of stuff. Like I think it was my way of doing this kind of teenage revolution. I don't know if rebel, not revolution. It's kind of rebel stuff, also a bit like this, what many young men, teenager boys might have, like wanting to prove themselves, wanting to be cool and put their a little bit of aggression here and there. I think that's all got channeled through breakdancing. So in a way, I'm very happy that this was my way to channel all this energy and need to explore and prove myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And when did you realize that dance could be a profession?
I was at a theater festival with my father. He took us for a holiday there, my brother and me, and there were a lot of dance workshops. And I took a workshop, a samba reggae workshop with a teacher there, and also one evening in a tent there was a contemporary dance performance. And it was the first contemporary dance performance I've ever seen. And this teacher, he also had an education in Zurich, and he was also a contemporary dancer, and he knew about the field. And after taking the workshop, I'm not sure exactly what he said, but like he expressed some thoughts about that I could do this professionally. And then there was also a juggler living in the tent next to us, and he asked me at some point, "Yeah, do you want to live from dancing?" And then I was like, "Oh my god, that's a question I have not really asked myself." So I remember in this festival, like seeing the first time contemporary dance, having this teacher being, appreciative of my dancing, and having this juggler asking me um, if I want to do this for a living. And then I was like, oh yeah, that's what I want to do, because I was, anyways, just waiting for the school to finish so I could go to breakdancing, basically.
No, I think it's wonderfully inspiring for me to meet people who have found a way to make their work the expression of their passion, their gifts, that which lights them up, and then can bring light and joy and enthusiasm and this, let's say, willingness to explore to others. So I always hats off when I meet people who've managed to do that. Another question I'd like to ask you, Shuka, for people who may be, on the Whole Life Yoga podcast, some people might recognize that your name, Shuka, is a Sanskrit name. And you already mentioned your mother and father having a role in introducing you to
Mm.
dance and
Yeah,
therapeutics and theater. And so
yeah,
would you be willing to share something about the story of
yeah,
your
sure.
name?
Yeah, sure. And this might relate then to what you in the beginning you said you would be curious about my relationship to spirituality as well. And this might be related because my parents, they are both German. So I just have this random Indian name because they were living in a Hindu commune, I should say. I think commune is the right word. I think like people, living together, growing their own food, and that kind of stuff in France. You might even call it a cult. I mean, after what I've heard, some of the things were a bit troubling, or at least are troubling to me, hearing it now. So they were spiritual seekers. My father, I would say, still is. But I grew up the first 2 or 3 years of my life there, surrounded by all these Krishnas. I think they were Krishnas, or at least they're. I still have the songs Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. I have the songs in my head, and all these blue figures from books laying around, shooting an arrow that has this, that can catch another arrow because it has a
Aha.
front and front. I remember some things, but I remember very little because, of course, I was only like 2 or maximum 3 years old when we moved back to Germany. My parents also kind of left that, I think, probably gradually behind. I'm not sure how sudden that shift was away from that kind of very committed Hindu thing. Yeah, and eventually my parents divorced at some point. My father kept on being a spiritual seeker with various, diving into various traditions and methods and things, while my mom didn't pursue this, and we kept on living with my mom. So I kind of stayed with my mom, and she was always like, as long as it helps people be a better person, that's cool. That was her attitude towards all religions. So she sent me to classes, like, learning about Christian stuff, and I learned that, and I liked the stories and like drawing the pictures. And then I didn't do the confirmation because I when the time came, because I was like, yeah, this is all interesting what we talk about in the philosophy, but I don't believe there is this guy up there. So I've always had this kind of open-minded upbringing in regard to spirituality. I've also enjoyed parts of that. I've also had my skepticism, to a big extent, I must say, because of my father, because he was, always kind of radically going into one thing and thinking that's the solution for everything, and then dropping that and being disappointed, and then radically going into another thing. And so, yeah, there was this mix of being very skeptical and being very intrigued, by that kind of stuff. And yeah, so my name just comes because they were Hindus, and then there was this Indian name, and because my brothers and cousins all had names with J, and there was no leftover cool male name with J, so my mom just thought I would be called Šuka instead, because they are Janos, Julian, Johannes, Jakob. Is the rest of the gang of the male gang of the family
Okay.
my age, and Šuka. That's
Because,
the
but it's
story.
interesting that Shukadeva is a sage, and
Yeah.
in some ways he's considered as he surpasses his father, who his father was a great rishi, a great sage, but Shukadev in the depth of his presence and his understanding of the subtler reality is sometimes said to have surpassed the father.
Mm.
And he had great mastery of the teachings as well. So
That's interesting.
yeah, and when I first met you, I was like, wow, that's such a cool name, man.
Yeah,
Because for me, it's like, oh, Shukadeva is this amazing figure from the Indic mythology,
yeah,
um, and the Indic tradition.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
so
It's very. No, go ahead. You go.
I was going to ask you, Shuka, so having you mentioned your skepticism and you had the kind of exposure to Christianity, um, was there a point where influences from the East became more obviously part of your life in terms of your own explorations or the way you approached teaching and study and practice of dance and
Yeah,
your
yeah. So I mean, as a teenager, then getting to breakdance and this kind of thing, I wasn't really concerned in anything with anything like typically religious, even though I was into some kind of interesting new age ideas like The Secret, where you just think positive thoughts all the time and then you manifest everything in your life that you want. I was playing with different kind of methods, most of them really weird and probably dangerous, of like training my mind and like imagining things and thinking if I don't lock my bike and I just really imagine that it's still standing there, that it will definitely be there. So I mean, I've done that kind of things in my teenage years, but not really thinking of it as a spiritual thing or anything like that. And then in my dance studies, I used to push a lot for breakdancing and big stretches and just very athletic kind of training. And at some point, I discovered the Feldenkrais method. And Feldenkrais method is an approach developed by Moshe Feldenkrais, obviously. So that's the name of the guy. And he works a lot with just very small movement. And it is in the form of someone talking, and you just lay down basically, and you just follow the instructions of the movement. And these are usually some instructions for movement, but then instructions for attending to different places of the body while you're moving.
Hmm.
And this just made me realize how good it feels to move in a way where you listen to your body. And
Hmm.
it just made me become very interested in like the power of attention and all the kind of experiences available through paying attention in a conscious way. So I would say that was, well, you asked me about the East, and I think the Feldenkrais method is very much in line with a lot of the kind of, or my understanding of some of the Buddhist and Eastern teaching.
Hmm.
And interestingly, I've had before like some years of Ashtanga yoga, but I think the way that I've practiced them, they were very far away from these ideas. So I think the Feldenkrais method actually brought me much closer to a true kind of listening, and much closer to what I now understand to be um, a practice of awareness and of meditation. So I think Feldenkrais method just got me interested in that, and it still had the movement aspect in it and the attention aspect. And then, yeah, at some point I was into listening to all this YouTube psychologists and people telling you how to optimize your life and biohack yourself and for 100 years of living and this kind of thing. And you know, people telling you like psychedelics are cool and you should take them because they make you I don't know, healthier and this kind of stuff. I'm saying it like this because many of these advices and things that I've listened to, I wouldn't give to other people. But at some point, I discovered through that people who like recommend meditation as this kind of self-improvement biohacking thing, and I think through that I got into meditation, and then just through different online classes or apps, and just in that way I've had my introduction to it. And then I started reading and listening to podcasts and getting a bit into this kind of Buddhism, or Buddhism taught by Western Buddhist teachers who often happen to be smart kind of scientists or therapists or that kind of thing. So it's a particular kind of perspective on the Buddhist thought, I think.
And I'm curious, Shuka, when you were performing,
Yeah.
because I had an experience, this is many years ago. I saw it was in the UK, it was a contemporary dance company, and the particular performance was a kind of farewell tour for, I think there were maybe half a dozen dancers, and 4 of them were going to retire at the end of that tour.
Mm-hmm.
And at the performance, there was a kind of question and answer afterwards. And there was a question to the dancers about having spent so many years in such intimate relationship with the body, how they thought that might empower them when they left the realm of dance before. And I was staggered when several of them said they never really thought about the relationship to the body, and they were just doing a job. They never thought of it in those terms. Because for me, I always assumed, because I've met a few professional dancers who do have that. They realize that, no, they're very much they do listen to their body, and that's why they were able to do it for a long time. So I wonder if for you, like let's say the interface between the body as the tool that helps you do the job of performing and executing a choreography and being part of a show, as you have been in various seasons, and then this other aspect of listening and learning, and maybe also living in a healthier way, or a way that allows you to feel more joy, or like I would say, for me, longevity is associated with joy and easefulness and exuberance in life. So how is that for you?
It's interesting. I think some people might be able to combine it, but for me these seem really like 2 different things. You know, one is kind of me focusing on creating an artwork for an observer, and like in my case this usually happen to be things that don't feel great in the body, because usually, you know, it is interesting to see someone like distorting themselves and pushing themselves to the limits and doing very impressive things, and these are not necessarily the kind of movements or movement habits or ways of approaching the body that you want to have in your everyday life. So for me, I think a lot of the way I approach dance, but I'm also a bit, or I used to be a very extreme kind of person, like really going for the maximum and everything. I felt like a lot of the learning there was actually counterproductive for that project of, you know, having a good relationship to the body. So like, yeah, I had a special relationship to the body, but not necessarily a better one than before I started professional dancing, I would say. Yeah, and this even counts, as I said, like for things like yoga and this kind of thing, that I felt like looking back now, I feel like I've hurt myself with it, or like done my body bad with it. And then the Feldenkrais kind of started to turn that around slowly, and then also like fighting monkey practice, which is where we met at that kind of workshop, kind of playful approach to training. Like these were things that then started to ring bells in my head of, oh, like movement can feel intrinsically so rewarding, completely independent of what it looks like, or independent of this, like, oh, it feels good that this person saw that cool move, which is a different thing than, oh, it just feels so nice right now doing this thing. So I got more and more interested in that. And like when I finished my studies and I started working with a Greek choreographer, Dimitris Papaioannou is his name, I could decide what my training would be. We didn't have training in the company, just the rehearsals. So for some time I barely danced. Like I would only do like things like Feldenkrais and Fighting Monkey, the only things that felt good. And then at some point I started studying with Frey Faust, who has a very anatomical informed approach to dancing. And I mean, there's also a whole lot of I would say kind of ethics or philosophy around treatment of the body in there. And that started to help me connect again dancing back to this kind of pleasant, interesting sensations I have from the Feldenkrais or from the playful Fighting Monkey style training. So then at some point dance came back and I completely retrained everything, like every movement I did, in a way that it actually does feel good, and I feel better after the session than before. Because before that, it was really not the case. I would feel more tensed afterwards. And the time that I realized that I actually felt worse after dancing than before, this was the time when I kind of doubted the dancing. And then later I found a different way of approaching dance. But for me, that meant exiting completely this world of the performing arts. In the beginning, only in my practice, and eventually now completely. Now I'm focusing on researching the kind of things that I'm interested in and teaching the stuff that I feel like I can teach. So yeah, for me, I didn't manage to find a kind of balance there, and I think some people might do, but I'm not, and I don't also feel I have to. Like I really enjoy only now looking at dance as this kind of way of practicing my relationship to my body at once, but then also relationship to my mind and my thinking, my feelings, to the world around me. Did that answer the question?
Yeah. So, I mean, sometimes, in the yogic vision of life, life is described as a dance. So what you said, I think, very beautiful. And would you like to share a bit more, Shukra? Or I'm certainly curious to hear more about your movement into the realm of the facilitator, the inviter, the
Yeah,
educator, and how that came
yeah,
about. Because
yeah,
I sense what you shared already, like the shift in perspective and motivation, but how it kind
yeah,
of happened for you, I'd
yeah,
love to hear more about that.
yeah. So I think one thing that is interesting is that I didn't start out seeing a dance performance and thinking, oh, that's what I want to do. So it was never really the performance that caught me. I would say it was more like, I mean, the breakdancing caught me, but it is not. It is show based, but it's a kind of participatory thing. You have the circle,
Yeah,
people go in and out. So yes, you do a show,
yeah,
but for other people who will also then do a show for you. So it's a bit more this kind of community, having fun, researching
yes.
together, refining their own skills, a bit of tribalism in there. Like, oh, these other crews full of shit, and we're the coolest kids in town. So that was really my hook into the dancing. So, and then when I went to university, everyone around me, or most people, really were like dancing for the stage and training their skills so that they can get then nice jobs. And like they love the art of performing on stage, and they love to watch dance shows, which in many cases I don't really enjoy. Um, and so but I really loved all the training we did in university. I loved the classes, just learning all these ways of moving. And I've also enjoyed performances and rehearsals, but always less than the training. In that way, it's not really a shift, I would say, because I've never been to that place actually that the primary thing was really the end result, the show. I've always liked to impress people. I still do. So there is this thing, but I've always like to impress more people who know about what we do, so that's the breakdance kind of thing. It's not really me in front of an audience who can barely walk without pain doing backflips. That didn't seem very interesting to me. It was more like, yeah, someone who knows of the art, I want to show them what I can do. So which is in a way also performance. That's what I'm saying, why I'm saying it, but it's not that kind of audience um, and stage separation kind of performance thing. So, but everyone around me and all the staff of university, of course, everyone's has this vision of, to be a successful dancer, it's like dancing on stage, isn't it? And a teacher is a bit more like, yeah, when you get old and injured, or if you don't make it. So like it's not the like no one from my year, I think, has. I actually know there's one girl who became a yoga teacher, but no one else chose to teach voluntarily. I think. I think some people might do it while they're waiting for another job, but most people would love to perform and be on stage, basically. So I've applied. I followed along with that trend. I think I've applied for a job, and I've gotten to work with a choreographer who was like a very big name and has I've toured in a lot of places. So I've basically gotten to one of the best places I could get to in that sense, in that world of dancing. And yeah, doing that, I still realized that that's not like what I'm 100% into. That I'm very happy I've done that, but I've also started teaching during that time while I was doing that kind of work, and I realized that my teaching days were happier days. They felt more in line with what I did than my performance days, even though there were like 2,000 people in the theater clapping and being in awe. And I felt like I don't really feel that I make an impact. I don't really feel connected to the people. In the same way that if I teach a class and then I meet someone later and they tell me like, this thing that you said a year ago, that's really helped me and I can do this. So it's just a thing that it then became very clear once I've had this kind of dream job that I had then started to consider to be the dream during university, because everyone around me probably considered that to be the thing. I think then I was in a good place to actually realize like, yeah, but actually I still prefer just researching and teaching. So it's not really new. Already during university, I always said I also like teaching. I've also always taught friends and stuff by breakdance tricks and stuff like that. I mean, not big classes, but I've always liked to share my knowledge. I've always was excited to discuss. And also because I was just so interested in learning and articulating it, I always ended up also explaining things to people. I'm kind of a smart ass in that regard. Yeah, and then because of all this touring stuff, I started to teach in a lot of different places and build up a kind of CV that sounds fancy. So I used also this tour and the performance work and the prestige that comes with it to build up a network that then now allows me to completely live comfortably from teaching only. So, but now I would say since I stopped that and only teaching now, it really feels for the first time that's exactly what I want to do. Like before that, it was still like, yeah, it's something with dancing and moving, but it's not quite there yet. And now it feels like I'm really doing what I want to do.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And when we work together, Shuka, what do you want to give or share? Or maybe more broadly speaking, these
Mhm.
days when you're working not with dance professionals, but with a more general audience,
Yeah,
how would you describe what it is that you want to facilitate or teach or invite?
yeah, yeah. That's not so. It's not so easy to say for me yet, oftentimes. But I would say, well, the body plays a very big part in it, obviously, because dance and movement has been my major focus, even though meditation awareness practices have also now been in the mix for I think 7 years or something like that, 6 or 7 years, like almost daily. But dancing movement part has been there for much longer. So yeah, I think a lot of people could benefit from a different relationship to their body. And I'm saying relationship because it's not really that I want to teach people to do handstands or acrobatics or that kind of thing. I like to do them if it is in line with, like if it's approached with the right attitude, if the relationship to the skill is there. So actually, I always joke about it. Yeah, I put some videos where I do like the acrobatics and things, but in the beginning, my class was like 90% impressive things, and then with time that goes so much down. Now the first third of the class, people just lay on the floor and do body scans and do slow movements and stuff. So not saying that there's no exciting things and that there's no value in acrobatics, but that has changed a lot because the importance for me of the relationship to the body and just the attitude that we bring towards ourselves, different parts of ourselves, has been just so essential to me. And I think I became good at teaching the things that I was bad at, and I've always been very good at pushing, and I've been very good at doing impressive things, and I've been very good at kind of how to say it, like biting through things and kind of doing the harder thing. And what I really had to learn was kind of listening to my body, being a bit more, taking things a bit more lightly. Don't be so serious. Don't be so rigid. Don't be overly ambitious. So there's some thing about playfulness, about curiosity, about relaxation that I've had a hard time learning in some ways, and still am in the process of learning that. I'm no black belt for sure, but that then have informed the way I teach. And I think dance is a wonderful way of practicing that attitude, because dance is inherently playful, I think, and or the way I approach dance, I should say. Classical ballet might not be that playful, but I think dance can be inherently playful. I should say it can be very, you know, how do I say it? It's celebrative, very joyful. Like it is part of dancing is that you just do it for the sake of doing it. Part of the cool thing about it is that it's not done for the utility of it, and because of that, I think there's a lot of utility to be
Yeah.
that you can get out of that. There's a lot of utility in doing things for no reason, just other than that they are fun. So I think that kind of attitude, taught through movement, is one of the main things that I want to get across to people. And then I also like to really help them moving better, like being really more skillful in movement. And that really doesn't mean for me like big athletic features and splits and handstand. That really means that they can go through their day without pain. I hope that I'm talking with my mom and I give her new exercises through Skype or new ideas of exploration, because I would just like that people can move through their life, with a lot of energy and a lot of joy, and as little pain and illness as possible. So that's also something I hope to give along. And I think that's the kind of me part. But then there's this sense of that you can expand that, and then through things like contact improvisation or other things, you can start exploring also how you relate to other people, not just to yourself and to your own feelings and sensations, but also relate to other people. Or I like to dance with the environment since a year or something, which is something like parkour, but more contact improv style, but very Feldenkrais. I don't know how to call it yet. Maybe somatic parkour. I'm still thinking about it, but where I'm also, playing with the environment, playing with consciously savoring and taking in visual sounds and other things. So I'm, just trying to help people become a little bit more engaged, interested, relaxed, and nice to be around, basically. And I think dance is an excellent way of doing that.
Definitely. And can I ask you mentioned you're interested, so this somatic Feldenkrais inspired parkour. Is there anything
Yeah,
else in terms of your own relationship to your body and to dance as a means of exploration that's really coming up for you now? You've described a kind of trajectory. I noticed, you mentioned when you were a teenager, when you were breakdancing, your friends became your crew, and you
yeah,
were fully immersed in that, and so it already evoked an archetypal blueprint of a person who shares his passion in an infectious way that other people are drawn to, then you can
yeah,
all learn together. So I see a
yeah,
beautiful, this is a new iteration of that. And
yeah,
it feels to me, as I listen to you, that you are in your in your work, you are sharing from your own your own exploration is kind of propelling your teaching and your work with
Mm.
others. So I'm curious, you've described several kind of movements as in the evolution of
Yeah,
your own relationship to your
yeah,
body and the
yeah,
dancing arts. Is there anything that's happening now that you'd
yeah,
like to share?
yeah. So I'm always experimenting, and then as soon as I feel like my understanding is just enough, or just a little bit more than the average person, I start teaching it, and then I learn a lot just from teaching them. But basically, I just teach things that I'm interested in at that moment, and that shifts. So my most recent big passions, I would say, is like one is contact improvisation. So like since a year and a half or something, I've gotten into that. And again, like you said before, with the practice group, getting everyone in, like my brother's also doing contact improvisation, living in Leipzig. My girlfriend is doing contact improvisation. Many of my friends are doing it, and it's becoming a bit like this breakdance thing that you're just with people and you're like, you want to do a bit of contact, and like sure, and you just hang out with friends and you're dancing a little bit in between. So that has been a very big thing, and I've also started teaching it then quite soon. So now, like since some months, I'm also teaching it with my brother together. So we are just on the very start of figuring out how to teach that, but we're doing it together because it's contact improv, so it makes sense
Yeah.
to also figure the teaching out together. And then the other thing that I'm very excited about, and I have hooked like two people to it a little bit that explore with that, but is this dancing with the environment, and that's really I think that's a really cool and unique thing, because I think it's really this blend of, like the way I do it is really a blend of contact improv, because you could say it's contact improv with the environment, but
Mm.
and then it's already parkour in a way,
Mm.
just that in parkour you decide beforehand what you're gonna do, while in contact improv you research in the moment, and in parkour you're not very
Mm.
intimate with the environment, I would say. And in contact improv,
Mm.
you are kind of, enjoying the touch as well. And so I'm kind of also rubbing myself on the stairs and really enjoying how I can massage myself and then dancing with that. So I'm really tasting that thing. It looks really weird. It feels really druggish sometimes. Um, and yeah, and I approach it then also very much in a Feldenkrais style. Often I would just go in any position and then I would do a freestyle Feldenkrais. So I would just start with playing a little movement and seeing what that does in the rest of my body, which by now I know in many movements, or I know, I should say more, I have a quite clear expectation in many movements on a regular floor. But as soon as you just tweak the environment a little bit, you can explore
Mm.
again from zero. What's the response to pushing my foot into the floor in that new configuration? So I felt that this made my dance practice again very exciting, so that now I would say most of my dancing is either contact improv or with the environment. It kind of shifted a bit away from this me myself. Sometimes I still do that. In the winter, I did it again more because it was cold
Mm.
outside. But then I
Mm.
also dance with my couch or that kind of thing. So that's something I'm excited about, but I feel like it's in a stage that I'm not yet teaching it, and I'm still researching it. But I who knows? Sometimes I'm excited about things for a year and then I drop them. With this one, I feel like there's still something to be found there. And then I'm
Mm.
qigong hooked. So there's this teacher, Simon Thakur or Thakur, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He has this thing called ancestral movement. He's based in Australia, and he's a teacher of several, I think, types of traditions of awareness practices and movement practices. He's a very sweet guy, and he does this online classes. I've had some private sessions with him, and so I'm exploring qigong
Mm.
um, every morning since some months. I don't know since when exactly. And for me, again, I view it from a dancing perspective. So for me, it's a dance of attention. So I'm doing
Mm.
this kind of body scans and scanning the awareness. I just see it as patterns of pathways of attention that I dance. And then what I like to do at the end, I do like improvised freestyle qigong, because I cannot do anything without messing it up at the end. And then I do like with this kind of movements, but I send it in random places. And can I send my awareness in through that ear here and go around and through my teeth and out there, that kind of thing. So I'm playing with a qigong which is interesting for me because it's a type of meditation that includes movement, and it has a dynamic foundation. I mean, there's standing practice, also standing still, but then you also kind of do like scans with your awareness and stuff there. And I like that because I like to play around. So that's also a new thing. I think these are the three main things that I'm excited about recently.
Yeah, cool. Well, thank you for spending time today, Shuka. I'm also excited about working together,
Yeah,
and I look forward to our collaboration in October.
yeah, me too.
We speak more about that in another video. When you mention about the contact improvisation and dancing in relationship to another person or to the environment, this is another where I see the connection to, yoga happens in relationship, and our relationship not just to ourselves, but including to ourselves, but also to everything and everybody else that we interact with. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to exploring through a yogic lens and also through the way that you share. So I look forward to continuing the conversation in person then.
Yes, me
Thank
too.
you, Shuka.
Yes, thank you, James.